So it seems like Gene Burell is all over YouTube. What's going on, everyone? You are watching Sight Sounds Flavors on YouTube, sightsoundsflavors.com. If at any point in time you like the video, smash that like button. Also, be sure to subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. There's also a button down below. And leave a comment. So, excuse me. It's important to get your vitamin C. I like Gene. A lot of people don't. He's a tough guy. I'm not. An associate with the Bananos. Was an associate with the Bananos. And when you think about it, he knew so many people involved in the life. He was directly related to the life. And if he couldn't get his button, imagine how hard it would be for some guy that was completely not in that world, that had to do work, that had to put in the time, that had to pay the dues, that had to cut his teeth. It's interesting because the one thing that we learn is that the mob today is a shell of what it was before. So I guess the question is, what is the incentive in 2024? Again, if you're in that life, which I'm not, but I'm not Italian, but I'm just saying, if you're in that life, what's the incentive to, go on record with somebody and do work for somebody and like, if as a criminal organization, it's on its last legs, according to many. But maybe that's the whole point, to appear as if you're on your last legs. I don't know, but the point is, a lot of people don't like Gene. A lot of people don't like John A. Light. A lot of people don't like Michael Francese. I really like Joey Merlino. I watch his podcast. I like him, a little snuff. I like what they're all about. But I also like Gene Burell, which is interesting because they kind of go back and forth a little bit. And it's interesting because there's that sit-down show where the guy says, oh, we're just going to have Gene Burell on for a couple of minutes. Turns out has him on for half the show. Nothing against that. It was a good live. It's just that this is a guy that even if you intend to only talk to for a little bit, you find yourself talking to for a long time. He's an interesting guy. He's got a lot to talk about, and he doesn't seem to hold back. And, as a YouTuber, as a journalist on any level, that's like the ideal person to interview or the ideal person to interact with, because they're not going to hold back. They're not going to BS you. They're not going to sandbag you. They're not going to be passive aggressive. They're just talk to you like normally. So, same thing would happen to me. I want to talk to a guy for a couple of minutes. I end up talking to him for half an hour, and that's not me not being transparent. It's just, it is what it is. And this is why he's doing so many podcasts, because of the fact he doesn't have that filter. And, it concerns me for him, because I don't know him. I've never talked to him before, but I don't want to see him get jammed up. And it seems like the more attention that he gets, the more jammed up that he gets as well. And I do think it's a bit of a double standard, because you look at the John and Gene show, and those guys got, at least Gene did, got in a lot of trouble for it. And then you got everybody else doing them. They don't get in any trouble, So yeah, I'm just really just kind of reacting to the fact that he's all over the place, because I thought he was gone from YouTube. And, there's Andy Ruggiano. That's another guy that's got a pretty good little YouTube thing going on. And there's a lot of guys, from the former life. The only guy that has not cooperated that's doing anything on social media is Joey Merlino, because even John Jr. had that 302, which again, I don't know if he was clean for a day or not, but it looks like maybe he was. I don't know, but that doesn't mean that he was, a cheese eater. It just means that, well, I don't know. It really depends. It really depends, because, you look at The Sopranos. I know that's not real life, but you look at The Sopranos, and actually it is pretty close to real life, because they basically, from what I understand, carbon copied it from the DeCavalcantes, and they even have like a real life Tony Soprano, they think, who I think A&E did something. I've seen it a million times. Johnny Ocean or Billy Ocean or something, Frankie Ocean. I don't know, something Ocean. And that's supposed to be like, basically who, and they have it down to like the pork store, like parallel one block off from the one in Northern Jersey. But in any event, that's a huge aside. But in The Sopranos, you kind of see it where, I don't know if I should say this or not. Let me hold off on that, because that analogy I think might be a little too much for this video. But all I'm saying is that it's interesting how, God, should I say that? I don't know if I should say that or not. I don't know if I should say that. I don't think I should. I don't want to make that point, because I think that point, it's a little, well, okay, I'm going to go ahead and just say it. When Johnny Sack pleads guilty, they view that as, I mean, not cooperating, but because they say you never should admit to this thing, right? And when you plead guilty, there's the allocution, which is like, I mean, based on The Sopranos, which has been said to be the most accurate basis of modern day LCN. I mean, then by that, you would have any number of people, because even then Joey would be, you know, I don't know if Joey had to allocute, but by pleading guilty, I don't know if, so there's just like so many degrees of an organization that, according to some, like Gene Burell, isn't even better off being an LAK instead of, you know, a member of them. So I don't know. But I got to tell you, you know, I just hope this guy doesn't get himself into trouble, because I love watching him, but I don't want to love watching him at his expense. In other words, I don't want to love watching him because he's getting a few $100 or a couple $1,000 to do this appearance. And then they just kind of rack up appearances. And now all of a sudden he's got, you know what I mean? For some nonsense, you know, something that has nothing to do with YouTube, but they just don't want him on YouTube. You know what I mean? There's something to be said about people that just don't hold back, you know? And that's why, like, you know, that guy, the sit-down guy, who I watch his show all the time, and I love his show. It's a good show, very informative show. But he's like, look, I know a lot of you guys don't like Gene. I'm going to talk to him for a couple minutes. He's trying to do right by the viewers that don't like him. He's also trying to, you know, not overextend. Ends up talking to the guy for 20 minutes or whatever, you know. And that's the thing. I mean, that's where I think the draw is at, right? I think this guy's got a lot to say. And what's interesting, too, is that it may not all be true. I'm not calling him a liar. I'm just, you know, maybe I am, but I'm not calling him a liar, maybe an exaggerator. But then again, isn't that kind of what social media is about, right? Like, you want to stand out. A little bit of that might be marketing. A little bit of that might be embellishment. A little bit of that might have been a little white lie here and there. And again, so, and then sometimes people mismarket him, like when they said he was a hitman, and he even said he wasn't a hitman. He heard people, but he wasn't a hitman. That's a mischaracterization, right? But that mischaracterization gets you a bunch of hits. Then you do a retraction a little bit later on that nobody sees, and you're even, right? Even Steven, right? I mean, I don't think so. I think that's kind of a scam, but, you know, clickbait is what it is. I mean, you know, we're trying to stand out. Some of us, you know, resort to that. Others make an 8-minute video on a 10-second thought, and really try to articulate a lot of points and generate some conversation, and we just do it that way, you know what I mean? But, you know, I just hope that he doesn't get himself jammed up, because the thing is with him is the more press he does, the bigger the bullseye on his back becomes, and it's certain attorneys in the government and certain agents, because he even says there's agents and attorneys that helped him, judges that helped him, and there's others that didn't. There's others that made it their career to jam him up, you know? And you know, Naidu, I don't remember his first name, which I should. What kind of a fan am I? But there's just so many channels that I watch. Made an excellent point, an absolutely excellent point. And that point was that the attention for this one particular guy hurts him sometimes, you know what I mean? And even how Gene said it, there was a guy there in the government that basically made it his career to jam him up. Hold on, let me finish my thought. And another point that the sit-down host made was that Gene gets beautiful women and, you know, I guess has nice cars and dresses up nice and all that stuff. And maybe some people in the government would rather him be, you know, poor and destitute and unemployed, you know, living in a garage somewhere, you know what I mean? With no dates and no social life, you know? And so again, you put the attention in, and you put the, you know, the lifestyle in, and you put, you know, the fact that he does well with the ladies, and you put the fact that, you know, he's hanging around with like celebrities and doing well, meanwhile, not part of that life anymore. Meanwhile, not committing crimes anymore. Meanwhile, trying to live that straight and narrow, and he gets jammed up because there's just people that just, you know, haven't seen their, as Nadu says, in 30 years, you know. But there's a difference when that person's on YouTube in a comment box or that person's a federal prosecutor or a judge. So anyways, I enjoy watching Gene, enjoy watching a lot of the people. Not a big Sammy fan. I don't like Sammy that much. And not a big Francesi fan either. I think he's full of it. You know, I mean, he spends 90% of the time talking about his former life. Doesn't talk about preaching, doesn't talk about saving people, doesn't talk about helping in the community. His channel is 100% crime, 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 LCN, LCN, LCN. You shouldn't do this. I mean, it's like, come on. Sammy, same thing. Joey's out there in the community. He's doing charitable events, and you see him doing them. Yeah, I mean, he's got guests on that have nothing to do with LCN. He's got guests that do. They talk about betting. They talk about, you know, football, commiserating. They go out to eat. And by going out to eat and eating in a restaurant, they're helping that restaurant. I mean, with so much business you couldn't even imagine. And so that's, you can't compare that, you know. Ruggiano's like talking, you know, like in a closet somewhere, you know, and he's got a couple of paintings on the wall or pictures. But, you know, he's not going to get any awards for his stage presence or whatever, but he's entertaining. I like him. You know, I like him, and I believe him. That's so important, you know, that you're entertained and that you believe. Now, do I believe Gene? About 80%. But there's enough truth in there. There's plenty of truth in there, sprinkled maybe with a little exaggeration, maybe a little bit of foggy memory, maybe a little bit of just a little white lie, and it makes it very interesting. And, but here's the thing that's interesting is that Gene and Joey both I enjoy more. Well, actually, no, let me take that back. Let me shut up. I'm going to shut up here in a second. I was going to say I enjoy them both with a co-host, but that's not necessarily true because I've actually seen Joey do stuff more or less solo or with an interviewer that basically asks him 2 questions, and he does all right. With Gene, I don't know. It would be interesting. This might be interesting. I don't know if it's been done before. It would be interesting. It's probably been done before. I don't know. It would be interesting to see Gene do a solo show. Basically, maybe have a producer or something like that, kind of like on the Breakfast Club, where they kind of talk to the producer a little bit, but not a lot. Or like Howard Stern talks to, well, that's not a good example. He basically talks to everybody in his crew, but it would be interesting to see what Gene would talk about, how he'd run a show. Not a live show, a show, like a pre-recorded show, just him, kind of like Patrick Bet-David does on Volleytainment. That'd be interesting to see. But most of these guys, you know, Francesi does the solo thing, and well, then most of them do the solo thing, but I think Gene just seemed to do better with John A. Light with him, or the sit-down guy with him, or a strong interviewer that's going to ask him questions and is going to let him talk. That's the other thing. Every interviewer, the sit-down especially, they let him talk. That's a sign of a great interviewer. You don't, people aren't there to listen to you, I know, like, but they're there to listen to him. And if you're a great interviewer, when he does an interview with someone else, he'll be, damn, I wish he was back at that sit-down, you know what I mean? Or damn, I wish he was back at whatever. So that, for you, is your incentive as a journalist to be so good that you stand out from the other journalists. But again, the people are there to hear the person you're interviewing, not the interviewer. So anyways, there's some really, really good videos out there with Gene Burell, and there's a lot of other good LCN-related videos. I'm not a fan of them all, but, you know, in any event, I hope you enjoyed. This is a long-ass video on Gene Burell. I mean, I was only going to talk about him for 2 minutes.